Maureen is joining us this morning to talk about the Africa board, and it's been a long and hard struggle to try to get companies onto that board. The last one that we saw here was a year ago, and that was Trustco. And now we have got Wilderness Safari coming onto the exchange, and let's talk to Maureen and find out if there are more in the pipeline. Maureen, first of all, let's just go back a little and say, a year ago, Trustco came, greater things were promised, nothing is materialized, but having said that, the recognition surely must also be there. It's been a very difficult environment.
Absolutely. To say nothing has materialized, I think that's, we believe. I think there's a lot of progress that has been made.
Oh, I meant visibly. For us, that
visibly. Okay. Yeah, I think behind the scenes, there's a lot of work that has been going on.
Sure.
We understood from the first time we set up the Africa board that there would be a lot of work involved in getting the Africa board brand recognized and accepted on the continent. You know, there's always a perception JSE or South Africa just want to take over the continent. So we've had to deal with a lot of stakeholders on the continent, and that's part of our learning process. You can't just go directly and talk to the issuer. There's the exchange, there's the regulator, you know, sometimes you have to talk to the ministers of finance. So it's been a long process, but I think we're making headway. The exchanges are talking to us positively, the ones we've engaged. Yes, there are issues that they've raised, and we're basically saying we want to talk about those issues so that they can see the benefits that will accrue to them.
I suppose some of those benefits also, if you look at least at Trustco, which joined a year ago. Now, you were telling me earlier that we've seen volumes spike up here. The volumes that trade here compared to the volumes that trade in Namibia, way different.
Absolutely. On average, you have the average daily trading for Trustco on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange is about 15,000 trades. On the Namibian Stock Exchange, we're looking at about 700. And if you look at, you know, you might look at the share price on the Namibian Stock Exchange, it's higher than what it is here. But for us, it's a sort of indicative of the liquid, you know, it's not as liquid on that market, but there's relatively active trading taking place here. So the share price has fluctuated quite a bit.
So the case for trading here is compelling. So clearly from an issuer perspective, really, it's a no-brainer. It makes sense to be in Johannesburg. But as you say, it's the other considerations that are coming into play. Now, have you been able to, would you say, to deal effectively with those issues in all the geographies that you're trying to penetrate?
We have, and I think everybody makes this comment about how Africa is not one country, and we sort of make that mistake when we go in. We have a solution that's going to work for every country.
I would say there are too many 53 countries. I think what we need are probably 3 or 4 large blocks, and then we get on with it and catch up with the rest of the world.
Absolutely, but I think that's where the regional blocks then become, you know, relevant, because then you're dealing with one block and not 10 countries out of SADC. But at the same time, there are circumstances that are particular to a country. You know, you're dealing with some countries where they are not dematerialized yet. You know, they still are using the call-over system, and we are electronic. So if you're getting a company from that kind of jurisdiction, you have to understand, before you actually get them here, you have to dematerialize their shares. And I think there's politics as well that comes in, and that's a given. Protocol, we need to understand. You just don't walk into a country and just go straight to the issuer. So.
But what about these regional blocks that were set up by the African Union? You know, you have SADC, you have ECOWAS, you have got the East African Community in East Africa, and all of those regions, if I remember correctly, have got specific divisions that deal with stock exchanges. Do those structures help or hinder the process?
I think they're helping. We've begun talking to SADC, and I think we've made good progress there. The problem comes in with countries that are members of various blocks. You have countries that are members of SADC, they are members of the East African, no, not the East African Community, COMESA. And that becomes problematic because what are their priorities then? But with SADC, I think we've made relatively good progress.
So in terms of bringing the companies now in, now we've got Wilderness coming in, and we'll talk shortly about that and what it is bringing. In terms of the companies that you're talking to now, where would you say your most activity is?
I think SADC region have made good progress. We're talking to a number of companies there. We're talking to a number of brokers where we want to establish broker relationships with the South African brokers. West Africa, there are a number of good companies, big companies that we're talking to. We can't divulge right now, but we are also...
maybe just share 1 or 2 with us here today.
No, not at this stage. I think there's a process that they have to go through before they can actually list here. But I think we're in very good discussions with them.
So it's SADC and West Africa. East Africa?
East Africa, we haven't really made headway there.
And there's Mauritius there, trading very strongly.
I mean, Mauritius, we haven't really made contact with them. But there are a number of good companies there that, you know, I'm sure if we
So 5 years down the line, Maureen, where do you see the Africa board being? Because we've gone down a year and we've got one company. Now we're going to get 2 companies. 5 years, where do you see the Africa board?
I think we'll have a substantial number of listings. I think, you know, when you begin to look at the quality of the companies that are coming on board, and sometimes when you talk to companies, we don't want to be an orphan. So I think the more companies that we get, it actually becomes easier, because I think everybody's kind of standing back and saying, you know, I don't want to be the first one and risk being the only company there. But we are making progress, and I think, you know, as we begin to get more, the momentum will just build up.
I was going to ask about the type of companies that are coming, but we're running out of time. So perhaps briefly, Wilderness, what does it bring?
Wilderness, I think, adds to the Africa Board brand. This is a company that has been in existence for 26 years. We've already had calls from brokers who are saying, when are they listing? You know, so it's a very respected brand, and we are very happy that it's actually come to list on the Africa Board.
Absolutely. Maureen, thanks so much indeed. Indeed, the volumes from Trustco support the case that investors are interested and would like to see these companies on, but perhaps it's a matter of time and also your work in and what you put in.